talking to anybody yet, but we're talking to people on video.
Okay.
This was live streamed on October, was it 17th?
Yes, I don't even know what day it is. Happy Saturday, guys. I hope you guys are having a great Saturday. Yay! 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 Okay. So, yeah. I'm why am I forgetting how to talk all of a sudden? I forgot what day it is.
Saturday.
It's Saturday, and I know I slept in today. I've actually kind of been like a bum. I've slept in all week, but I slept in today. I didn't get up till 7, and I went and I was active, and now I just want to be a bum. So, and I have so much more to do. I was just telling my friend I have 57 papers that need to be graded by next Saturday, and I have done at this point none. So I need to figure out an effective method to make sure I get those papers graded in the next 6 days. So I don't know. So I guess, it looks like we have a couple of people watching. So hi, guys. Happy Saturday. Thank you guys so much for popping in on our impromptu discussion. Not a debate. It's going to be a healthy discussion on Prop 25. For those of you guys who may not know me, I am Kim, also known as K&B, and I'm just happy to be here. So I'll hand it over to my partner here.
Yeah, I'm Jon Ivey, the Voter Access Project. We've been doing these live streams for the last month or so. We've got another one scheduled for this coming Wednesday where we're going to finish up the props, but we wanted to do a discussion today on Proposition 25, which is the bail reform proposition that's on the ballot. We wanted to briefly talk about last chance to do the regular registration to vote is this weekend, or Monday is the last day, where anybody right now, they can go onto vote.ca.gov or register-to-vote.ca.gov or Google registering to vote, and they can fill it out online, and it only takes 5 minutes, and you can make sure your registration is up to date and everything's going well. After Monday, that process is going to change a little. Like, people could still register, but they won't really be able to do it online, that they'll have to go to their local elections office or to a vote center when it opens up, or to the polling places on election day.
Yes. Just again to add, in Lodi on October 31st, and actually not just Lodi, like Jon pointed out on our last live, all throughout California, there's going to be voting service centers where you can go in and complete that paperwork. So without having to go down to Stockton in our area, the San Joaquin County Voter Register's office is in Stockton. But starting October 31st, there will be 4 locations in Lodi in other cities where you can do the voter registration on the same day. So, all right. So I think the one thing I wanted to say, well, actually, Jon, I'll let you go because you actually have some data and some slides. So I'll let you walk through those.
Well, I just wanted to start out with kind of a broad overview to make sure, to get everybody up on speed on what we're talking about with bail reform. So,
okay.
Got some rhymes here: crimes, jails, prison, and bail. There's really 3 types of crimes, things that you can be charged with, things, interactions with police officers, kind of thing. And that's infractions, misdemeanors, and felonies. Infractions are really not crimes. They're things like parking tickets, some speeding tickets, things like that, where you don't get a jury trial, you don't get a trial at all. You just get a summons to pay that ticket. You can go to traffic court if you want, but it's not really a part of the criminal process. So it's not really a crime. You just pay a fine. That's an infraction.
And that it's not a crime. You just pay a fine. So we're already off to a wrap here.
Yeah. I will submit, my demo tape later. Misdemeanors are low-level crimes. So most of these are like petty crimes, like petty theft and petty assault, and things that aren't necessarily a big deal, but can still get you up to 6 months to a year in jail on the maximum end. And so misdemeanors are still serious. You still go through a criminal process. But felonies are the more serious crimes. That's like armed robbery, assault, rape, murder, serious crimes that in the old English system, felony meant that they were all capital offenses, meaning that if you like robbed someone, the penalty would have been to put you to death. But thanks to mostly to the Quakers, we went through a kind of a revolution of, oh, we shouldn't kill everybody. Let's find another system, and they went with jails and prisons. So in California, about 75,000 people at any given time are in a California jail. And we say at any given time because they don't stay there for very long. The most somebody stays in a jail is usually around a year, and so and that's a maximum. Most people don't stay more than a week in jail. And out of those 75,000 people, it's made up of people who were convicted of misdemeanors. So people who have been arrested and gone to trial and or pled guilty, and they're serving their sentence. There's some people that were convicted of felonies, and we'll talk a little bit more about felonies, but some people who were convicted of felonies, maybe they didn't have room in the prison, so they've sent them out to the county jail. So each county has its jail, and they might be serving their prison sentence in the county jail instead of the state prison. And then most people, so more than half of the people that are in jail actually haven't been convicted of anything yet. They're just people that have been accused of a crime and arrested, and they're either awaiting trial for a felony charge, or they're just being held for the misdemeanor. And then we have our state prisons, which has a population around 100,000 people. And these are people that have been convicted of felonies. And so there's no one in prison that hasn't already been convicted. And then to talk about bail. So when somebody is accused of a crime and arrested, there are multiple stages where they can either be released or held until they're convicted. And the first stage is when you're arrested. The arresting authority, the cops and the DA there, they have the ability to just cite and release you, basically to say, hey, this is what you're accused of. Here is your court dates that you're expected to show up to, and you're free to go until those court dates. So that's always an option. In misdemeanor cases, that's the default. is misdemeanors in California, you're released within 2 days. I don't think anybody should be held for longer, except for in special circumstances. In the case of felonies, that also applies that they have that opportunity at that stage to release people. They also can set bail at that point, a preliminary bail. And so bail is the idea that we want people to show up to court. And so one way to do that is to require them to put up money or property, where if they don't show up to court when they're supposed to, then we keep that money or property from them. And that's the classic idea of bail, is that these people aren't convicted of any crimes yet. They haven't been found guilty, and so we consider them innocent. And so the default is we want to let them out of jail until they're convicted, but we also want to make sure that they come back. And in most cases, this is true throughout the United States of there's different bail systems. In California, how it works is that you really have two options for posting bail. You can either post the full amount of the bail, meaning that you hand over the cash or property, and they'll give it back to you after the trial is completed, or you can pay a bail bondsman to put up a bond for you, which is an insurance company agrees to pay the amount if you don't show up to court. And to do that, bail bondsman is a fee that you pay to the bail bondsman and you don't get back. And so in California, wealthy people, if you have a house you can put up, if you have $100,000 in cash that you can put up, then you don't actually have to pay anything. You just kind of hand it over and they hand it back later. But if you're a poor person, then you ironically have to be a poor person that has enough money to pay a bail bondsman fee. And that just gets kept. So if your bail amount is $100,000, then you have to pay someone $10,000 to get out of jail, and you don't get that money back. And so wealthy people don't have to pay this at all if they're arrested. Not that wealthy people are arrested to begin with. There's systemic problems with that to begin with, but poor people are the ones that have to pay these fees. And most people who get arrested, so misdemeanors, are being released without bail. Some people who are arrested, certain violent offenders, don't have the option to bail at all. So about 5% of a pre-arrest detainee or pre-conviction detainees are in a category of people that we're not going to release on bail. And that's basically when there is clear and convincing evidence that they pose a threat. So let's say I walked up to the mayor of my town and shot him in front of a crowd. I'm not going to be released on bail the next day to go back out in the community. Even though I haven't been convicted yet of the crime, there's clear and convincing evidence that I am a danger to society. And so while bail is a right that we all have, it's not an absolute right. So about 5% of offenders don't qualify for bail at all. And that was my very short but also long-winded explanation of bail.
So it was a great explanation. So a couple of things I just kind of wanted to add. I wanted to take a step back and I wanted to talk about why we are here on a Saturday and talking about this proposition. And, Jon and I, while we don't agree on the solution, we absolutely agree on the importance of, one, bringing awareness to the harm that is being implemented on people that are at a lower socioeconomic advantage, right? People who don't have access to pay for bail. We both agree very transparently that the bail bondsman system is corrupt, right? Those that are profiting and monetizing someone's conviction is kind of despicable. And so that we needed to have a better solution. So I also wanted to kind of take a step back and talk about why we are here. And I'm going to rely on my partner in crime here to help me out here. So we want to take a step back. And in the last lives, we've talked about what a referendum is. We've talked about how we get things on the ballot. And we've talked about how legislators pass law, but then the citizens or special interest groups have an opportunity to challenge those laws. So this proposition was the outcome of legislation that passed called AB 10. Jon, correct me if I'm missing anything. And Jon, I don't know if you had a slide to discuss this, but I wanted to kind of talk about, so what happened is in California, our elected officials passed legislation to abolish the system of cash bail. California would have been the first state to implement this. And the special interest groups, the bail bondsmen, decided like, hey, no, oh my gosh, that's going to put us out of business. So we're going to fight this. We're going to try to appeal this law. And that is why it is on the ballot on November 3rd as a referendum. So what I wanted to take a step back and is to talk about just some factual, like, I don't know, have all of the statistics, but the fact that fines, when Jon lays out what fines are, I want to talk about how it has been proven scientifically how fines are being used to basically uphold the budget of police department. So I want to give a specific example of, I believe it was in 2015, of the findings that came out of Ferguson that found that Black and brown people were being disproportionately affected and targeted by fines. And I also want to talk about the fact of how fines, with the outcome of having a fine can cause to you. So if you have fines that are unpaid in certain states, you can be denied the access to vote. You can have your license suspended for a failure to pay fine. So I think it's important to talk about, like, oh, when you just get this fine slapped on you, it's not just cut and dry like that. It can come back and impact your life in very meaningful ways. And I think Jon and I don't want to speak for Jon, so I'll let him chime in. We both agree that that is problematic, right? And I also want to talk about, like, bail. Where did bail come from? The Eighth Amendment gives us this whole idea that we should have bail. And I'm just going to read this language that says, the U.S. Constitution ensures that a criminal defendant will not appear for trial. The Eighth Amendment of the United States, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. And I want to talk about, like, who gets to define what cruel and an unusual punishment is. Because if I am poor, right, and I don't have access to resources that allow me to get out of jail, right, like, I'm going to say that I think that that's kind of cruel and unusual punishment, because that I don't have a monetary resource to get my freedom. And I also want to talk about the fact that, and Jon is my lawyer here, so he can clean this up for me a lot better, that just because I am charged with a crime, we are all innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. However, when you're charged with a crime, right, and if you're arrested, you still have to post bail. I find that very problematic, right? And so we thought that this topic was so important and it was so expansive that we really wanted to kind of separate it from our normal lives and just really have an honest, transparent conversation about it. Also, I want to say that we need to normalize that we can have a differing opinion on something, even when we want to see the same desired outcome. And we need to normalize that two adults can really think through something and maybe change their opinion, right? It is okay to be presented with facts and data and then say, okay, I didn't think about that. And so I kind of wanted to say, before, when I started doing my research on the propositions and the legislation, I had a very different opinion on which way I was going to go on this proposition. I was very, firm in my decision that, I was going to vote this way. But then personally, when I started digging a little deeper and looking at data and facts, and, I changed my mind. And now, Jon and I we don't agree, and that's okay, right? And maybe after this call, I might change my mind and I might say, well, damn, Jon, you were right. But we just want to have a healthy conversation. And the final thing I wanted to say is I was talking to my good friend Mickey this morning, and we just want to show the world, right, that it is okay for us to disagree in a respectful manner. But I think we need to kind of we can't disagree on facts or the truth, right? We can't have a conversation if it's based on lies, right? And so, again, I just want to encourage everyone to have healthy discussions, but look at facts, look at data, right? And that's why we're here. And so we really kind of encourage you guys, if you have questions, if something doesn't make sense, to talk to us, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of like what I wanted to say, is really that I think that we really need to take a step back and understand the system, right? Like how we talked about on our last live, how the prison system at large is very much, a corporate greed, very, successful way for a particular group to earn money and profit off of people's lives. And I just find that kind of despicable, right? And I also want to the final thing right now I want to say is, if you go back and look at the people who are actually incarcerated for violent crimes that are a danger to society versus people who are in jail for minor infractions or misdemeanors or non-violent crimes, it's pretty disproportionate, right, of who is actually being incarcerated, right? And that's also, if we look at how much money California is spending, and as Jon maybe starts talking, I'll pull up some facts on how much you as taxpayers or citizens are spending on keeping people incarcerated that are not a threat to society. Damn, it's outrageous. So I'm going to stop there, and then let's get into the nitty gritty. Jon.
Yeah. So again, we're here to talk about Prop 25. So I thought I'd put that up. It's the referendum on law that replaced money bail with system based on public safety and flight risk. And basically, so this is a referendum. Again, this is a law that was passed by the legislature, signed by the governor, and then the bail industry got enough signatures together to put a stop to that law and put it on the ballot for us to vote on. And so this doesn't become law until we vote yes on it, and it doesn't become law if we vote no on it. So what happens if this doesn't pass? What it means is the legislature can go back to work at the beginning of next year and come up with another solution. They can, basically hit the grindstone and try and get another measure passed. I don't think voting no on this would end the push for bail reform in California or throughout the country. That we all think that the current system has major problems, and so even if this doesn't pass, it's not the end of the story. And the same thing is true if it does pass. If this specific law gets put on the books and into process, the legislature can still come back at the beginning of next year and work on changing it, moving it into where it's better, maybe moving it to where it's worse. Basically, this isn't the final say on bail reform overall. But what this proposition would specifically do is eliminate cash bail completely. That's the first top line thing that it does. Is nobody would have the right to post bail, and nobody would have the need to post bail. There would just be a large group of people that get released without posting the money, and a large group of people, or a slightly smaller group of people, that wouldn't get released at all. And what did I want to talk about next? Was so for me, when looking at this, what we want to do is look at the process for how it is right now, so people can understand that, and then look at the process that we're going to, and then we can talk about this shift to a system based on public safety and flight risk, which is a coded way of saying systemic racism is basically the system that we would be switching to, is one with some deep flaws to it, that is the leading reason why we would vote no on it. So it's important that we talk about that. So that's kind of the direction I wanted to go, was explaining how the system is now for bail, and then explaining how the proposed system would be. And so for that, I wanted to pull up, we have the Public Policy Institute of California. And let me see if I can find, looking for my.
So while John's looking for that, I know I wanted to, before we get into kind of our opinions and our discussion, I wanted to ask, does anyone in the audience, our viewers, have any questions on what we've talked about so far? Because I think that what I am seeing, and we talked about this a little bit, is that the language sometimes, for if you're really just trying to educate yourself and inform yourself, sometimes the language can be a little bit confusing and a little bit non-inclusive. So I just want to make sure and just remind everyone that I personally, and I'm going to vouch for John too, we don't believe that there's any dumb questions or stupid questions. Like, we created this environment for us to learn together. So I just want to check in and remind you guys that this is a two-way conversation. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, because John and I both, as we're discussing, we're looking for your questions. So just to kind of pop in on that to make sure. So John, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and definitely, if anything that we're talking about sounds interesting and you want to know more, we have links to more information and more people shouting about it, at least. But a lot of good analysis. So here's one picture that I wanted to pull up of how pretrial detention and bail works right now. And so it kind of does this flow chart, and this is what we would call the common way that it works in California, because right now each Superior Court district, so each county, really kind of sets up how they handle detention. But this is the usual way in California. Is somebody's arrested, they could be cited and released right there by the arresting authority. If they're booked, meaning that they're processed in, then at that point, they can make a decision to release them or detain them. In many counties, especially the larger ones, after booking and detaining them, they go to a pretrial assessment. So the pretrial assessment is not state law right now, but in many counties, they're already using the pretrial assessment tools that would come under Prop 25, which is a way of kind of systemically deciding whether or not a person is either a flight risk or a risk to public safety. So those are the two things we consider when we're considering how much bail is going to be, and if to give bail at all, is, are they a flight risk? Meaning, are they going to show up to court when it's their time to show up to court, or do we think that they're going to run away and hide? And then the other thing is, are they a danger to the community? Is this a serial killer we just caught? We don't necessarily want to let him out, and so he can kill more people. And those are the two considerations we do. Classically, the way that's done is by prosecutors and judges getting together and doing the good old boys thing of, well, he looks like a criminal. Let's keep him locked up. And that historically has had major problems. The one way of reform that's come about since the 80s is the idea of pretrial assessments. Pretrial assessment tools, so algorithms and spreadsheets and questions that you ask. Like, one question would be, what age was this person when they were first arrested for the first time? Do they have family members that are in prison? And what you slowly realize is these questions are pretty weird, and they might be just a proxy for some other question that you're not really allowed to ask. And it kind of pushes this systemic problem, but it's also, some people point to it as colorblind, as these are just answers and questions. So counties are using these pretrial assessment tools to really score their detainees. And if you have a higher enough score in the danger or flight risk columns, then you keep them. And if they have a low enough score, then you let them go. And so that's one process that's in place in several large counties. And then after that, so that's all before you get to see a judge. That's done. So you have 3 opportunities to be released, basically, before you even get to the judge. Within 3 days, yep.
I'm going to stop you because we have a question, and it says, how do you petition the court without being roped into the bail system and thereby giving away freedom? And my question cut off. And then it says that it's an option, but doesn't seem viable for anyone. So I kind of wanted to stop you to see, because I honestly don't know how you petition the court without, like, so do you have any information on that, or is that something?
Okay, well, so if you're arrested, right, and you're being held, the cops and the DA have 3 days before you have to get your what's called an arraignment. Mm-hmm. And so sometime within those 3 days, you're going to get in front of a judge. Mm-hmm. And at that time, that judge will hear from you and will set your bail, or decide to release you, or decide that you don't get bail. And so that's your point to petition the court to lower your bail or to release you on your own reconnaissance, that sort of thing. So a lot of options. Honestly, you get arrested, and the cops, when you're booked, they have an option to kind of estimate a bail for you. And if you agree to pay that right then you can get out. If that's a high number, or you think you should be released on your own, your really only option is to wait for that arraignment. So to sit in jail for those 3 days, enjoy the peace and quiet, and then talk to the judge. And so it's really kind of a system that's set up to be a little against you. Which is not surprising, because it's set up by the people that are trying to prosecute. And so in misdemeanor cases, you're only going to be in jail for 2 days. Felonies, you're going to be, at most, you're going to be there for 3 days before you get to an arraignment. And then once that arraignment happens, the judge will either release you, or with bail, with conditions on your releasement. Maybe you'll be required to have an ankle monitor and pay for the ankle monitor. That sort of thing. Maybe you won't be able to leave your house, or maybe you'll just be able to go to work. So that will come from the judge, or you'll remain in jail. If you don't want to pay the bail or can't pay the bail, you'll be detained. And then you kind of just proceed with the case. The DA could drop the case and you're just released, else you're going to be there until the case resolves. And we have a question. Is there a consistent pretrial assessment process that would be implemented statewide? Who develops that process, and who could change that? Okay, so what we were looking at here was how things go right now. And the pretrial assessment tools, it's not statewide, but it's pretty common. It's called like the Ohio assessment tools, because it was developed by this organization in Ohio for use in these pretrial determinations. So it's pretty standardized. I wouldn't say that there's going to be a lot of difference between the counties, but if we implement Prop 25, what we'll be changing to is a system that looks like this.
I want to jump in, and one thing I want to add, and I don't want to confuse people, but I also want to just quickly point out the distinction between a federal crime and a state crime, and understanding that this legislation, especially the question that was asked made me want to just call this out, right? That we have this system only in California that it's pretty consistent, but not, I would say, mandatory to be consistent, if that is kind of like an oxymoron. Because when it gets into sentencings and all of those things are very various outliers that can cause the process to not be consistent. But what I want to kind of point out is that we have federal crimes that this law and legislation would not apply to. And I want to also say that, the user is, the question is like, who is in charge of that, right? And I would say, Jon, I want you to help me out here, but what I think is important to call out is that historically we have not been consistent in our sentencing and our arrests and how we treat people that are accused of a crime. And when you say who can fix it, I personally believe like we can fix it. We can fix it by advocating for new legislation, by bringing awareness to a lot of the injustices that are occurring, because a lot of people don't understand. Because if we look at what's reporting on our news, right, it's just things to be sensationalized, right? And they're not talking about these things that are impacting us every day. Because you think, well, I haven't been convicted of a crime, right? Well, the average cost is of keeping someone in jail is $81,000 per year, right? And if we look at our taxes and how it's being used, right, it is impacting us. So I just kind of wanted to say that this was a great question that you asked, and this is why a part of the reason why we really wanted to have this discussion about this proposition, because there are a lot of things that are more, there are a lot of underlining issues that we need to have awareness brought to when it comes to like our criminal system, our jails, bail. That whole system is corrupt, it's convoluted, it's complicated, and we really need to be having more discussions about it, but we're not, because there's such big money in it for certain people. So I'm going to kind of go back, and I want to do with Jon and I talked about how this conversation, right? Honestly, we're political junkie, news junkie, so we could talk about this for like 8 hours, but I want to be mindful of the conversation, because we were at 2:30 and we haven't even really kind of talked about our specific positions, and I want to be respectful of your times. So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to answer this, bring awareness to this question, then I'm going to give it back to Jon. So it says, zero reason we couldn't just have them go home and show up for court later if we want to challenge it like a speeding ticket. God knows we aren't scared of using warrants. I mean, real talk. We're definitely not scared. But I think, that brings up another point that you guys are going to get tired of me saying, like, shut up. Like, they don't want to bring awareness to it because, like, kind of the same reasons why they don't want you to vote, because it's big money in this for them, right? Like, they're, preying on, innocent citizens or people who commit minor infractions, and they're turning it into a big business. So why would they want it to stop? I mean, that's why this is on the ballot as a referendum, because a special interest group is realizing that they're going to lose their money making, like their capital. Like, who are we going to prey off of if they end this cash bail system? So, okay. Again, I'm going to give it back to Jon because I want us to get into the details. But again, this is such an important conversation, and please feel free to keep asking questions because they're great questions.
And I did want to take a little sideline to before we get into what SB 10 or Prop 25 does, is that bail in California is a little bit higher than in other states. That we're a bit above the average, but in each county we have what is called a bail schedule. So it's not just like everybody's just willy-nilly deciding what bail is. So we have the San Joaquin County bail schedule, which you can just Google and look up, and it's the uniform bail schedule for the county, and it just lists the crimes and what the normal bail amount would be if you're accused of that crime.
Jon, I beg to differ. I think that we have a lot of evidence showing judges going rogue, and like you have this standard. It should be a standard, but I don't even want to get into the conversation about judges and how they do have this lovely guideline where they should be following these standards. However, there are a lot of cases to show that judges do what the hell they want to do. A lot.
Yeah, and I wanted to point out on this is the minimum you can expect if you are accused of these crimes.
Okay.
I mean, there's also room on the lower end. Not all judges are bad guys, but systemically, looking at it as the system as a whole, is there's a lot of bad.
It's pretty problematic.
Yeah, so this is I wanted to point out how huge these amounts are on just the schedule that they're encouraged to follow. That they could also just say, oh well, this guy looks more dangerous than he is, and they increase the bail. But the average on here is like 100,000 for a lot of things. If you're accused of carjacking, it's $250,000 bail, which means that if you don't have $250,000 in property to hand over until your trial's done, that you have to pay $25,000 that doesn't come back to you, or you're sitting in jail. And that's what bail is with us right now, and what leads to and I wanted to show one more stat. If I can find my screen right. Oh yeah, it's at the top. That's why. This is from the Public Policy Institute of California, a nonprofit that analyzes this stuff again. Is that these are the percent of pretrial releases or detainees. So the green is this 59% are the people that aren't released, that sit in jail until their case is resolved. In California, it's 59% of people, even if they're offered bail, they can't afford it. They just remain in jail. Whereas the rest of the U.S., that ratio is reversed. That 68% of the people are released and only 32% are detained. And again, the difference in who is authorized to do bail isn't different. In both California and the rest of the United States, it's about 5% of offenders are deemed to be too dangerous to let out. So 95% of people have access to bail. It's just in California, those bail amounts are much higher. And so that's a leading cause for why so many people are sitting in jail when they haven't been convicted of a crime yet.
And I need you to say that again. I need you to say that again. How many people are sitting in jail and have not been convicted of a crime? Like, I just really think that is so important, and it's something that I can really, you remember my soapbox, guys, that I kind of surf on? We can have a whole discussion over that. And we can also have a whole discussion over the fact of how different groups of socioeconomic advantages are being policed, right? And targeted, right? And we can also look at the stats to show like what you're initially charged with and what you end up being convicted of, and the disparities in that. So I just kind of want to talk about that. And then there's a question that is right online with this conversation that says, who sets the prices people pay bailsmen? And it is, John, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's the Bail Bondsmen's Association. And they, I'm just going to say it, like they're slime, right? There's complete bottom of my shoe bucket scum of the earth. And this is one of the areas where John and I completely agree that, they're pariahs, right? And so they are the ones that are deciding what your freedom is worth, right? If you do not have the appropriate resources, right, they get to decide how much you have to pay when you haven't even been convicted of a crime.
And the maximum, we do set a maximum in law that is 10% of the bail amount. And it turns out, hey, that's the maximum. That's what they're going to charge. Because I'm not saying that you can't shop around, but it's also very hard to shop around when you're sitting in a jail cell, and this is the number that the jail gave you. I don't know, I don't know how many people have experienced being arrested or bailing someone out, but the last time I bailed someone out was in West Virginia, in this small town, and they wouldn't let me post the bail. They made my friend go to a bail bondsman and pay the bail bondsman, because that's how this little town worked. Was that the sheriff booked them, and the car tow place got their fee, the bail bondsman got his fee, the court got their fees, and that's how they run their town. And so that wouldn't be surprising stories that I've heard anywhere, is where there's money involved, these systems just kind of get corrupt.
And I want to, unfortunately, this is an area that I probably have a little bit too much experience in, personally, family-wise, whatever. So the last time I had to deal with this was in a different state as well. And I mean, it's just, I'm very opinionated, but it was a state that basically, I'll just tell this story without telling too much. In Denver, Colorado, marijuana is legal. In Wyoming, it is not legal. There is a certain area in Wyoming where it is essentially a trap. It is intentional that the police know that people are coming from Denver, where it is legal, and they are passing through Laramie. And so the police department has been very successful at capturing people that are just going about their business, coming through Denver, and arresting them for having pot. Right now, that is a whole nother story, but it's crazy that, John, I want to just talk about how, John, we also don't realize what happens when people are arrested, right? They lose their car, right? Their car is impounded. Then they have to pay these excessive fees to get their car out, right? Then they, it's just this domino effect that comes from really, I think, egregious and outrageous police policy. I'm just going to say that. But again, the average for typical percentage fee is 5%. And I don't know. I don't remember if that is national. I know in California, it's 5%, and the maximum that they can charge is 10%. And the bail is set on basically what type of infraction you are accused of, right? It varies, right? So John, I'm sorry. This is such a good topic that we can.
Well, that's why we came in on a Saturday to talk. We can just talk. Saturday.
So we can just talk. But I want to, because I know it's Saturday and people have stuff to do, and I don't want to rush this conversation. But I want to get to the nuts and bolts of where we disagree and where, like, we just kind of want to talk to you about it. So, John, I'm sorry, I'm kind of hijacking. I'm going to kind of. So I want to say, you're probably thinking, okay, like, it's pretty clear that Jon and Kim think bail is bad. Yes, we think it's bad. What I want to go back to, and John, I will ask you if you can pull back up the actual proposition, is where we kind of fall apart here. We don't agree. And that is in the solution, right? So I will just say it again, not telling anyone how to vote, but we both think that this system is problematic, right? And so a no vote basically will reject the law. I want you to go over to the yes vote, John. And so where we talk about what a yes vote does and how that's implemented, right? So a yes vote basically says we agree with the legislators. We like this law, and we want to see California go away from a bail system, right? And then Jon and I both agree that is where we need to go as a state and as a United States. We think that this is bad. We think that it disproportionately hurts people that are not wealthy, right, John? We agree with. but what I want to talk about here is what happens when we do away with the cash bail system, right? And what I want to talk about is this thing called risk-based algorithms. This is where Jon and I don't agree, right? Is that what happens once, like, how do we decide who gets out of jail and what the process is? And I have been kind of doing research on this for about 10 days. And I still personally have a lot of unanswered questions, and it might be lack of research. So I'm hoping if Jon has some more facts, he can talk about it. But I want to talk about, really importantly, what will happen once if you say, yes, I agree with this law, we need to get away with cash bail system. What happens and how the process is of who is going to get out of jail. So basically what's going to happen is that there's going to be a categorization of low risk, medium risk, and high risk. And if you are deemed high risk, you could not be released from jail. Someone says the risk evaluation will be racist. Solution. Again, I'm going to say it. I'm getting into the nitty gritty here. I'm jumping way ahead. This is where Jon and I disagree. So for me, I have a huge problem with these risk-based algorithms. We have already saw that the algorithms are racist, right? They're based on your sex, your geographical area, your race, on who is more likely to commit a crime. So I want to take a step back and talk about, we already all know, like, the data is out there. We can tag it. Jon can link it in the chat of who is already being policed. We already know disproportionately Black and brown people are being policed. It's just a fact. It's a non-negotiable we're not going to debate about that today at all. So my problem here is this algorithm, right? And that while Black and brown people are being harmed, right, they are still able to make bail. Some, not all, a very small part. So if we have to go to this risk-based algorithm that is inherently problematic and racist, I feel that this is going to do more harm to people that are being policed. The other thing that I have a problem with in this law, and I can't find it right now, Jon, maybe you can, is the fact that you are still essentially policed before you are convicted. Currently, right? If I am, I'm convicted of a crime, right? Or I'm sorry, I'm charged with a crime. The process is, let's say I go to jail, right? I post my bail, right? I'm free. I'm free to a certain point. There are certain restrictions, like you might not be allowed to leave the state. You might not be allowed to be in a certain place. So I guess I'm really not free. But under this new process, right? Under this new process, you're essentially still being monitored. You're still being monitored if they've deemed you worthy of being released, right? And then there is a chance, and I would say this is an opinion, right? It's just an opinion, that there is a higher probability that you just are stuck in jail, right? And so the risk for me is not worth the reward, right? I personally believe that, yes, we need to do away with cash bail systems, but this is not the way. I believe that, and also in my research, what I did is that I had to kind of educate myself, and it was third party, a lawyer who is in Oakland working with, people that are, Black and brown people that have been convicted of crimes, and they are against this proposition. The ACLU is against this proposition because of the fact of the risk-based algorithms are problematic. So again, sorry, Jon, I kind of just said, let's talk about this. But I really wanted to, before people had to jump off, I wanted them to hear your opinion, and I wanted them to hear my opinion in case they don't have time to go watch this, because I know a lot of people have their ballots and they really wanted to hear this discussion. So I'm going to stop.
Okay, yeah. Well, I wanted to give a plug to Claire White, our dope law group lawyer, who is just like an outstanding. She's a criminal defense attorney who did just a great speaker and a great activist. And like, if you're interested in criminal law stuff, she does weekly live shows that you can like look up all of them on Instagram, and she explains all of this stuff very well and gives you great tips. So dope law is great. And Claire is against the Prop 25, like Kim. And I'm more on the side of we should vote yes on Prop 25. Not because I disagree with you, Kim, on what you were saying about the pretrial assessment tools being racist. They're terrible. And that's the part of the bill that we need to fix. There isn't really, to answer the person on Facebook who asked, the risk evaluation will be racist solution, question mark. A perfect solution we don't know the answer to, because we haven't really tried. The leading thing that we want to try is individualized assessments. So actually looking at the cases and looking at the people as people, not using an algorithm, which was designed basically to perpetuate the system without, basically, if you were a racist and you were trying to design a system that locks up Black people, the number one question you would ask is, are they Black? And we've made it illegal in the United States to ask that question in making these determinations. So basically, they came up with 100 other questions to try and get at that, to try and statistically shift the thing so that we're getting the same results, basically. Because right now, Black youths are more likely to have interactions with police officers. We ask, did you have any interactions with police officers when you were young? As a way to suss out the thing that we're not allowed to ask. And that's the way I see the risk-based assessment tools, is that those questions are really just trying to, by proxy, ask the questions that they're not allowed to ask, make the assessment in the way they're not allowed to do it. An individualized assessment has its own problems, though. So is that the right solution? An individualized assessment, basically we're giving it over to judges, well, not judges, but to pretrial assessment teams, trained professionals that are kept to standards, to do individualized assessments. In other words, we'd have to make sure that they're not being racist, that they're not just following a racist checklist or a system. And so it's very unclear if that would work out perfectly if we implemented, but that would be our best path forward right now, is to lose the algorithms thought up in Ohio and try and just hire the right people to do the assessments to get rid of implicit and explicit biases and to go forward. So that's what we would like the law to be. This law doesn't do that.
We both would like
this law does a lot of good things, though. I don't want to say that this is, for the most part, just to talk a little bit about what we talked about what the process would be before. Now the process would be you show up, you get arrested. If it's a misdemeanor offense, most people have to be released within 12 hours. So before I was saying they can be held for 2 days, now they got to be out within hours. Except for in certain domestic violence things, certain aggravated assault cases. So there's a list of 10 exclusions where they're going to look at those misdemeanors as kind of misdemeanors plus. And so if it's a felony or it's one of those misdemeanor pluses, then within 24 hours, they get this risk assessment tool applied to them. and they get pumped into one of the three categories. Low risk, like white suburban guy who's never been arrested before, has a job and pays his taxes. He's going to be let go. And medium risk, they're going to look at that closer. So you're going to stay in longer. And then high risk, you're probably not going to be let go until you're done. What we're going to see is that most people are going to fall under this low risk and medium risk category. In other words, they would have in the old system already gotten bail, a bail amount, or been released on their own recognizance under the old system. And under the new system, they're probably going to be released anyway. The medium risk category, you're going to get additional conditions like ankle monitoring or restrictions on travel and things like that, which exist right now with the when bail is set with condition.
So, John, I have a question though.
Yeah.
I think this is where, and I mean, I totally could have missed it, and I will be happily to admit that. But when you say probably, like, right, I haven't seen anything that is telling me as a citizen, like the likelihood if this is going to happen. Everything that I have read is that they're still figuring out how this is going to work and how this is going to be implemented. And for me, and please correct me again, if I'm wrong, if I've missed something, that is where I have a problem. Because if you're looking at the data, right, I tried to find data and I learned that California hasn't really done data based on who is detained in the prison since 2002. And I don't really know the story behind that, or if I just missed something in my research. But here, according to the Prison Policy Initiative, it says that, I'm just going to read this really quick. As of 2002, the last time government collected this data nationally, about 29% of people in local jails were unconvicted. I mean, that's a huge number already that is locked up while awaiting trial or another hearing. Nearly 7 in 10, 69% of these detainees were people of color, with Black being 43% and Hispanic being 19.6%. Defendants especially overrepresented compared to their share of the U.S. population. Since then, pretrial populations have more than doubled in size, and unconvicted defendants now make up about 2/3, 65% of jail populations nationally. So for me, this is an assumption, and it could be incorrect when you're telling me that we're going to switch to these risk-based algorithms, and there's no infrastructure built on what that looks like. I am assuming, right, that this system is just going to continue, and it's going to continue to harm those. And so that small amount of people that are able to make bail are no longer going to be able. And so we're going to see more Black and brown people stuck in jail. That's how I take it. So I mean, again, I could have missed something, but I really, we didn't talk about this, and I'd love to know what you think.
Well, I mean, the overall numbers, no. More people will not be held in jail. Not more Black people held in jail. No. What will still be racist? What will be racist is who among those people that are still held in jail or that now don't have access to bail, what percentage of those are going to be people of color is going to show where the racism is. In other words, the overall number of young Black people in jail that haven't been charged yet is going to go down significantly under this system.
How? How are you determining that? Because if that's what I'm saying, I'm missing that. I feel like we're assuming that, but again, we don't know, or I don't know. I shouldn't say we, because you might. How these risk-based algorithms are going to be implemented. I don't see anything that tells me that. And so I am worried because as someone who knows a little bit about California, this is just like totally maybe a broad assumption, right? From what I have seen from us as a state is that our government institutions need a little bit improvement, in that when it comes to executing things, they are a little bit have a little bit room for improvement. So like, this is completely separate, but if we look at unemployment, right? And like how once we decided that we were going to implement $600 extra at a federal level, right? California was a hot mess, and we still have, you know, thousands of people who haven't received their unemployment because we didn't know how to implement it. So I am not seeing anything from our legislative body that you know, makes me confident that this is going to be implemented without a lot of severe problems that could disproportionately impact people who would be able to get out immediately. You see what I'm saying? So yeah. Did I miss that? Or like, you know, I'm really honestly just curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, the overall of it is right now, the only people who are denied bail, right, that 5%, are one where there's clear and convincing evidence that they're not, that they shouldn't be released. They pose a risk to the community. This SB 10, Prop 25 would kind of expand that and include more people who are not to be released.
How?
So it makes that bigger.
How though? That's what I need to understand, right? And if there is,
it basically lowers the standard. So the standard right now for denying bail completely is clear and convincing evidence that they will likely be convicted, that they pose a threat, or that they're a definite flight risk for trial. That it has to be clear and convincing, else they're going to get bail. The bail might be set extremely high. In some cases, millions of dollars might be what the bail is set for, but you still get that bail amount. And what this would change is that it would lower the standard for basically denying release altogether to using that risk-based assessment tool, and people in the high category would then be a judge also agreeing with that risk assessment, and they get basically denied bail. So that would include the 5% that's right now. Oh, and I don't have us on the screen. Why don't I have us on? There we go. That would include the 5% that's right now, and then some number of people that otherwise would have made bail if the bail might have been high, but now they don't get bail at all. And so what is that? So what is that percentage of people? And the PPIC, the Public Policy Institute of California, again, they crunched numbers and did some estimates, and they thought that number was about 3,000 people, or about 1.3%.
Okay.
Of the about 230,000 felony arrests. About 1.3% are going to be people that otherwise in the old system could have gotten bail, but now won't. And then everybody else who could have gotten bail in the old system will now just be released. They won't have to pay bail, which means that the 60% of those that, even though they made bail, couldn't afford it and were stuck in jail, are now released. And so it's a huge number of people that, even though they had access to bail, they didn't actually have access to bail because they couldn't afford to get out, are now to be released under this system.
Right. I think this is where I think we have maybe either a break in communication, because I completely agree. That is the goal of this legislation, that's what they want it to look like. But what I'm saying is that because this is new, right? And because they have not figured out yet how they're going to implement, right, these risk-based algorithms in California, while they are figuring it out, right? And they are working out of the kinks. There is nothing that I have seen that tells me, I see a lot of, we think this is the goal or this may happen, but there's nothing to show that there is an effective strategy on how we are going to implement this once we do away with the cash bail system. There's no plan. So I completely agree with you on what the desired outcome is and what it should look like and how it would absolutely help people. What I am worried about is because our elected officials and our government institutions within California have shown me as a citizen that I can't trust them to implement policy sometime, right? They're not necessarily as efficient as they would hope to be because of a lot of things, right? And so what happens to those people while we're trying to figure this out if we just do away with this system and we say, okay, this is the desired outcome. We're hoping this is what we want to happen, but we don't have any plan. What's happening while they're figuring it out is what I guess where I'm worried, you know.
Well, yeah, but the making that assessment racially non-biased and having effects that aren't seen worse for certain classes of people doesn't mean that the overall system wouldn't be improved. I mean, when we look at 60% of the people who have access to bail can't afford it, and we're talking about basically 1% of people that would have had access to bail in the old system and now they don't in the new one. Like I feel like that, like we can figure out that, but it's not like we have to figure out what to do with those people before we help the 60%, the bigger population. That even the people that can afford bail, that like paying $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 that you don't get back is hundreds of millions of dollars across the. In other words, there's a lot of good that can come before we figure out the tougher question of how to deal with that small percentage of people that right now would be deemed a high risk.
Okay, I agree with that, I guess, but I'm gonna, because we've been on for an hour.
And then, well, I want to say one other thing is that aside from that, the reason why this racist way of doing things is the way it's doing is because that's the negotiation that came out of this legislative session. In other words, the ACLU sponsored this bill, and the way they sponsored it, it would have been something that we all support, we all agree with. It would have gotten rid of this racist part of it. And one of the reasons why the racist part is there is because the bail bonds industry spent millions and millions of dollars basically bribing their legislators to interfere with that process, to fight that process. And if we have a chance to basically put them out of business, they can't come back next year and bribe a legislator. They can't lobby, they can't pay for the ads, they can't do anything. Once we eliminate them as an industry, then we can pass reforms. And so I want to say that this shouldn't increase the number of people in Black communities sitting in jail. What this might do is be unfair on the edges. In other words, the reason why this man or woman is sitting in jail is going to be because of their race. And that is unacceptable. But right now, even more Black men and women are going to be sitting in jail because of their race and because they're not paying the bail amount. Okay. And so I want to say that the tool is racist. We should get rid of the tool. But at the same time, like we have a chance to eliminate cash bail.
Okay, wait. I love these conversations. I am checking in with our audience because you guys have been quiet. So are you still with us? I see that some of you guys are on here. Or did we just lose you guys in this big discussion? So I think for me, this is again, Jon and I agree on so much, but I am still a hard no. I'm still a hard no on this legislation because, and if anyone, you know, and even Jon, because he's so much better at research than I am, I'm just going to say it, can show me anything of an infrastructure that is built to say, F this legislation on, you know, November 3rd, if we all say, yes, we embrace this law, right? What's going to happen? And is it 2021 when it's supposed to be executed? That is what I have seen again. And I could be wrong, is that they're still figuring it out. They're still figuring out how to invest money in resources, what it's going, which I don't care like how much it's going to cost the state. If it's eventually going to help and do away with this corrupt system, I'm all for that. I think it's important to call out what Jon said about the fact that the bail bondsman was able to lobby our elected officials and get this on the ballot, because the law, and we didn't really even talk about that, was good. If the law if it was on the ballot how it was originally implemented, I would be an absolute yes. But we have corruption, you know, and I do want to say that I completely agree with, like, I would say, you know, 70%, or actually maybe like 80% of what Jon is saying. I think, again, which I'm going to be very transparent, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, is that, you know, and I'm going to be very careful here because of where I work, is that I just don't see a clear plan from our legislators on how we're going to implement this. And that worries me. And I agree with Jon when he's saying it shouldn't cause more harm. But what I have seen is because a lack of organization, a lack of efficiency, and a lack of planning has caused harm when it should not. And I worry because right now people are, even though it's a smaller amount, right, they are still able to be freed. And what I've seen, you know, when our systems are at max capacity, right, and they don't have a staff in place, they haven't reached out to consulting firms, is as I see a little bit of chaos. And I'm not saying we can't get there, right, but I just don't see that right now. And that's why I'm a no, right? It's not because I don't agree with the intent of the law. It's not because I don't agree with the good that can come out. I am deeply concerned about how this is going to be implemented and what happens to the people that have been convicted of a crime, you know what I mean, that could post bail. And so that's why, again, right now I'm still a no, but I'm definitely open. If I've missed something and there's a clearer plan, then I would absolutely be a yes. So I just kind of want to stop there. And again, I don't want to cut you off, Jon, but I am, you know. And I want to say,
that was it. I mean, that was our whole explanation. The different things.
Yeah. And someone says, you know, ACA is a great example. It wasn't perfect, but can be good foundation to improve from. I completely agree, but also I guess I would say, look at what's happening with ACA. Right? Like, I mean, it definitely needs improvement, and it's still a hot ass mess. And so I guess the question we should ask ourselves, you know, when we're filling out our ballots is that, you know, do you think that the risk is worth the reward? You know, or the reward is, I can't remember, you know, if you think that this could, you know, it's a step in the right direction and that you would rather see us do away with this harmful system, then you know, you should absolutely vote yes, right? If you you know, it's kind of hard, because we both agree that the system is bad and we should abolish this harmful system. I just, you know, I guess my confidence in the plan is I just need a little bit more convincing that there is a clear structure in place that won't harm people, but I think that that's a great call out. And it says it's hard for me to think of a perfect measure or proposition the first time. But remember, this was a law, and that's a little bit different. This was a great law that was passed and signed in 2018. And then I don't know, let me be careful. They were lobbied, right? And they changed it, and how it is on the ballot now. John, correct me.
Well, yeah, no, you're a little off on this.
Okay.
So the law wasn't great. The law was great when it was proposed.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
By the ACLU. So by the time it was actually passed through the legislature and signed by the governor, it was what is on the ballot right now.
Yes.
So one of the points I was making was that in that process during the legislature where they're debating the bill and amending it and voting on it, the lobbying from the bail bondsman shifted the law to make it worse. In other words, we started with a good law, it made it worse, and that's what we're dealing with now.
Absolutely. I agree. I misspoke. But I'm saying, so it's like, I guess for me, well, shit. Now, okay, here's the deal. I completely agree, and I misspoke. And so thank you for calling out, John. But I want to say that I still have deep concerns about this. But and right now I'm still not a hard no. I think this conversation is quite honest.
Nobody should be too sure about how they vote on this, because I know I'm not.
Yeah, I would say, again, at first I was a yes, then I was a no. I was a hard, like absolutely no. This conversation, it definitely brought up some good points for me to think about. So I'm not still as firm in my no as I was before this conversation, but I'm still a no. And so, but now I'm just like, shit.
And hopefully either way, hopefully this doesn't end up mattering how this comes out, because again, this is just a law that the legislature is going to get back to either way. If it passes or if it doesn't, the legislature is going to get to work in the spring, and hopefully we'll have a better law either way. And so this is both an interesting and important topic, but it's also one that this won't be the end of it.
Yes. And so I kind of want to, what am I doing? I just have papers to grade this afternoon that I'm like, I kind of want to just really open it up. I think, I don't know why my chat's disappearing, but I know someone said that they, thought this was a good conversation. And I want to, ask you all, like, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? Do you feel a little bit better, or, whatever your personal opinion is? Or do you feel like you still have questions?
More confused than you were before?
Yeah, I definitely kind of want to hear from you guys. Do you, what do you think? Please, yes, I want to hear from our awesome, people that are here if you want to talk. So I'll just wait a little bit.
And so talking about risk assessments, there right now these sort of algorithmic risk assessments are used in criminal proceedings. They're used in juvenile proceedings too. So in deciding whether or not kids need to be locked up or taken away from their parents, they ask questions like, "Oh, do you have any family members that have had run-ins with the police? How many parents live with you? How many people are in your household total?" And they try and get at these socioeconomic markers to determine whether or not these kids are going to be trouble. And that sort of thing always it's terrible. Why would you do this? And some of them go, well, because this is less racist than the thing we were doing before. I go, that's not an answer. That's not how you make progress. We're doing something a little less racist.
Right. And that's where, again, this is why right now I'm a no, because when I think about those questions and the answers and the demographics of people that how they're going to answer, I see disparities. Right. And I worry about that. So, again, I definitely, I think I even personally, I love it. A lot to take in and chew in. This is one, there's been a couple of props for me that were just like no brainer. There are 2 or 3 propositions on the ballot that I am just kind of like sick over. Like I'm just, it's hard for me. I take this a little bit, I think we all, we take it seriously and we want to do the right thing. And oftentimes there's an unknown. I think the final thing I want to say is kind of, that's funny about Jon and I. I think I just realized this conversation sums us up perfectly. I am a worrier. I am an analytical, buff. Jon is very optimistic. He's very positive and he's very hopeful. So I think I can say, I think I was stressed out about Jon taking his bar exam more than he was, right? And this is kind of a perfect example, this conversation, right? I am a worrier. I am analyzing every piece of it. And sometimes I get paralysis analysis. I saw this shirt and it says, hold on, let me analyze this, because I just kind of get stuck. And sometimes, if I'm being really honest, that causes me to hold and pulling the trigger. And so what I want to say is I definitely know that my points are valid, but I also want to recognize the difference is sometimes when you're so worried and you're analyzing things back and forth that you don't act. And if we don't make a decision, right, we can't really move forward, right? And so it's the last Abe says, if we can get rid of cash bail without replacing that with some sort of automated proposition, it's not going to work. Automated probation, it's not going to work for me. Right. And that's honestly how I'm feeling, Abe. For me, it just great. Thank you. First of all, great conversation. Why is my comments are just leaving? So I'm not seeing what
they show up for me. I see them.
Yeah, I don't see them all. It's maybe as a user. So someone said something on, and I couldn't grade. I couldn't read it.
Great conversations. You both made great points. For me, it just comes down to the question: does it create space for improvement? Will it get us close to where I want to be? I feel it does, but I see the risk. It'll need improvement.
And I agree. That's a great point.
I think that's the tipping point for me. Why I'm voting yes on Prop 25 is because it drains the opposition of money. It kills the whole industry of bail bondsmen. And so anything that we want to do in this area, as far as passing laws and stuff like that, is we have to defeat this enemy. If the law was just these people don't have any money anymore, I would vote yes on it. And that's kind of what it does, and that's what pushes me towards, after considering all these things, going, yeah, I want to get them. I want to take them out so that we can move forward. That doesn't mean I'm right or that my way of thinking is the right way, but I'm just expressing that's what convinces me when considering all the things is, if we want to reform in the future, we've got to take on these industries. And it's the same thing in the other facets, like with the jails and the police and everything. Is the funding is a very important tool that we should be going for.
And first of all, okay, I'm gonna stop because I can continue to talk about this so much. Literally, this is I don't know if you guys know, I used to do speech and debate. This is just I hope that there are people debating this proposition. I'm sure they are right now. So I want to just again tell you guys to be very honest that I absolutely will let you know. I am really weird. I am one of those people, which is not, I definitely recommend voting early, but I like to kind of vote on election day. I'm just I don't know, I'm kind of weird. And so I have my ballot and I just, I'm just overanalyzing everything. And so I will let you guys know if I change my mind on this proposition. But right now I'm still a no. I'm still a no. And my closing argument here is that I am not a no because I don't believe that we need to rework the system. I am a no because my elected officials and my state agency has failed me a lot. And so when I think about freedom, right, and I think about the harm that can come even from one life, right, I have deep concerns. And I just know, as someone who has been in the system of, committing, to be quite honest, committing a crime, having family and friends that have committed a crimes, I can't, I don't trust them right now to do the right thing. And I don't trust for how long that it will take for them to figure it out. And when I think about the people who at least can post bail right now, I am deeply worried about what the effect is going to be. And I'm just so used to seeing all these reports. Well, it was supposed to do this, and damn it, it did this. And I'm scared. But, again, I'm being really honest that I'm completely over analytical. And sometimes that causes me to not make a decision. So again, I just want to let you guys know, like Jon said, we are having our, it's not final, but this particular series is going to end next Wednesday at 7:15. We're going to discuss the final propositions. We're still going to be working together. We're still going to be here for you guys. To answer your questions. If you have questions, if you want to know how to get this information that we shared, you can email us at info@voteraccess.org. We will have our next live. You can also go, I don't know if Jon's going to upload this. Oh God, me with no makeup to the public. Oh, that's okay. Whatever it is. We're here for you. We appreciate you guys taking some time out of your Saturday to kind of talk to you. And just thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for a good conversation. And just more importantly, the final thing I want to say is Monday, is the last, we were registered to vote. Make sure your friends and your family are registered to vote. Make sure that you're taking some time to truly understand what's on the ballot. And thank you. Democracy is important, and civic engagement is the key. And think about, think about the fact that what happened with this, right? The way that the ACLU proposed this law, and then the lobbying that occurred, and then the corruption that seeped in. It's why we need to be registered to vote. We voted, yes, but you're not done. Make sure your friends, your family, your uncle, your cousin, his mama, make sure, find 2 people. Continue to post. Just because you have voted, you understand the importance. There's a lot of people that still feel like it doesn't matter. They feel like they're not going to do it. And so you have a responsibility to make sure those people are voting. Even if there's some things you don't want to vote on, right? Even if you feel like, with the presidential race, it's it's a shit show, excuse my language, but honestly, you still can vote on the propositions. You can still vote on the measures. You can still vote on your trustees. So you don't have to vote on the president. I personally think you should, but that's my opinion. So you don't have to, right? So thank you guys, and happy Saturday.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Happy Saturday.
All right. Bye-bye.